Welcome to the Perez Art Museum, Miami. My name is Madi Robles, and I'm the Deputy Director for Education and Public Programs here at PAM. It is a pleasure to welcome you to this evening. I think it's going to be a very special panel, and I'm excited that we were able to partner with AIRIE on this particular program. The residency in the Everglades is such an important platform for this region and for giving artists the opportunity to work in the wilderness. PAM is excited to be able to promote this event and to be a place where this creative community can gather. We're proud this evening to have the Everglades National Park Superintendent, Pedro Ramos, the Executive Director of the Audubon, Florida, Eric Draper, and visual artist Susan Silas as our panelists and in a moderated conversation with Deborah Mitchell. Director of AIRIE, President of AIRIE. Now I'd like to go ahead and introduce BJ Sheffield, who has served as the President of AIRIE. And Sheffield has filled the former role of AIRIE President Christy Gast, who did an enormous amount of in her role to make the nonprofit what it is today. So we're excited to have BJ today. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here this evening. As Mari said, I'm currently the president of AIRIE. I'd like to thank Pam for a fabulous location for this evening's presentation. I'm going to back up a little bit because some people ask me this on a regular basis. AIRIE is the acronym for Artist in Residence in Everglades. AIRIE Inc., which is this organization, is the organization which partners with the Everglades National Park to support and enhance the artist residency program housed within Everglades National Park. Through the efforts of AIRIE, artist ambassadors mixed with science and cultural heritage of South Florida, AIRIE produces public outreach programs which support the purpose of Everglades National Park and increases public awareness of the critical importance of the subtropical ecosystem and our interrelated relationship to the water source known as the Everglades. We have several people to thank for this evening's program, and the sequence and order is, well, Mario actually already did it, was Pedro Ramos, Eric Draper, and Susan Silas, and our invocation tonight is going to be done by Houston Cypress, who lives in the heart of the Everglades. He's with the Miccosukee tribe, and combines art, communication, and spirituality through the organization called Love the Everglades Movement. Additionally, our following donors for this evening are Salmon Legal, thank you, LaCroix Beverage, Art Loft and the film crew is here this evening, and WLRN has been extremely generous over the past several months for doing interviews. We'd like to thank Everglades National Park for the constant support of Artist in Residency program. It's only with the continuing financial support from organizations, institutions, and individuals that AIRIE can support the Everglades National Park Artist Residency program and conduct public outreach programs like tonight. If AIRIE board members would raise your hand, I'd like everybody to just take a look around. If anybody else in the audience would like to join us in some way, shape, or form, contact one of those people this evening. Special thanks goes to Deborah Mitchell, our amazing executive director. If anybody says AIRIE, Deborah Mitchell is someplace within hearing shot. She's amazing. She's professional. She's got amazing energy and insights and tremendous passion. Because of Deborah, AIRIE was just in Art Slant magazine within the past week was nominated or recognized as one of the top 10 small nonprofit organizations in Miami. That's tremendous. I'm already over my time limit, but the significance of that is this organization is only 14 years old. Our 15th anniversary is next year and coincides with the National Park centennial. But as any good president will do, we have a lot of needs. So we're looking for constant, some of the campaigns that we're engaged in right now are for funding. AIRIE needs funding for some of the internal programs that we do with the park. We'd like to develop a stipend fund for the resident artists who come through. Our Wild Billboard project, courtesy of Insights for Susan Silas, still needs sponsorship throughout 2016, and we're looking for funders and backers to rehab the Flamingo gas station and give AIRIE a home within Everglades National Park. So if any of you out there would like to join us, grab somebody who raised their hand. Most importantly, thank you everyone here for being here tonight, because it's only with your support that we can continue forward. If you don't show up, there's no sense of having it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And with that, I'd like to introduce Houston Cypress. Thank you. I forgot one more important person. Closing comments tonight will be by Bill Maxwell, who is a journalist, a columnist for the Tampa Bay Times. He's currently a national park, or a volunteer writer for the National Park Service, and he is also an AIRIE alum. I didn't get the bookends here. Now, Houston.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank AIRIE for the opportunity to offer an invocation so that we can recognize the sacred moment which we are in. And so I'd like to take this moment to address the great mystery, to invoke the Great Spirit, to call upon the powers of the four directions, to our ancestors and the ancestors of this land and this water, to our allies and to the great beings of light who love us. Be with us now. Water is sacred, and water unites us all. I would like to offer up gratitude for the community that we are cultivating here. I would like to offer up gratitude for the power of art to inspire action and to invoke healing. Because, great mystery, there is a fragmentation and there is a division within our communities, which fragmentation and which division is reflected and mirrored in the land and in the water itself, evidenced by the canals and levees that crisscross these wetlands. And so we invoke the sacred power of art to heal our communities, to heal our souls with the creativity, with the community, with the inspiration and the power which spreads back to time immemorial, to primordial moments. We are expressing a belief in this power of art, this power of community, and this power of combined collaboration and action. And so it is for that reason that we also humbly ask for your forgiveness, great mystery, because it is us who demand these technologies which change the structures of these waters. It is us who depend on these industries. It is us who depend and support these sugars. And so for these and many other reasons, we humbly ask for your forgiveness. We also, great mystery, ask for your blessing. Blessings upon organizations like the Artists in Residence and Everglades program. Blessings upon these institutions like the Perez Art Museum of Miami. Great mystery, tonight, forevermore, we pray for compassion to flourish in the hearts and minds of decision makers and stakeholders involved in this Everglades restoration process. Great mystery, we pray for the growth of the community that is concerned with these Everglades matters, because the Everglades matters. And so finally, Great Spirit, we pray for the purity of these waters that flow from the headwaters of these Everglades at Shingle Creek, where otters chirp and frolic. Waters that find their way through serpentine pathways down through the Kissimmee River Valley. Holy waters that pour forth into the great Lake Okeechobee, whose form is ever in flux. Waters that find passageway south, over and through revivified marshlands, slowly and imperceptibly trickling around sawgrass sedges and cypress domes, waters that flow out beyond Florida Bay and Biscayne Bay, all the while replenishing subterranean aquifers and providing a foundation for the integrity and the vitality of the circle of life. And so for these things and many more, great mystery, great spirit, we thank you. Aho, amen, and so it is. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Well, let me raise the microphone. My name is Deborah. I feel like Houston said so much right there, but we're going to move on with some of the arts here. I'm going to get myself together here, and how about that? We have the next image. Yes. This evening, we will discuss the residency, the current wild billboards, and hear from the Everglades National Park Superintendent, the Audubon Society Executive Director, and Susan Silas, and then writer Bill Maxwell. The Everglades National Park is the third largest national park in the lower 48 states. At 1.5 million acres, approximately 2,400 square miles, it covers much of the southern peninsula of the state of Florida. Spanning the area from Naples to Miami and south to Florida Bay, it includes many different habitats and is home to 14 federally listed threatened and endangered species. It has experienced significant ecological damage from the water management decisions made over the last 130 years in Florida. The Everglades National Park was designated a World Heritage Site in 1979 and an International Biosphere Reserve in 1976. A wetland of international importance in 1987, and a specially protected area under the Cartagena Treaty in 2012. Pretty impressive. Now you know why we're all up here, because we care about it. So BJ told you our mission statement. I wanted to be able to share some slides with you of our artists' work. In other words, once the artists go down into the Everglades and spend a month shadowing rangers, hiking with some scientists, slowing down and unplugging and trying to understand what's going on with the land, they create their own body of work, and that could be in many different forms that you're about to see. Adam Nadell did this piece behind me, which is the former Everglades. It's now Weston. It's part of his exhibit, which will be traveling next year, called Getting the Water Right. With a little luck, we're going to have the Florida Humanities Council bring that to you in the Everglades. This is a still from a video by our own Naomi Fisher. She is collected by the Pam Museum, as well as Mark Dion, who some of you might be familiar with his work. It's really phenomenal. Naomi's work explores the chaotic opposition between nature and forces of culture and civilization. And as you know, Mark Dion has been recently in the Venice Biennale, and next year, probably during Art Basel, we'll have a life-size installation in the Kampong in Coconut Grove. Very excited about that. As recently as October, a gentleman in the audience, go ahead and stand up, Jason. I'm calling you out. Jason Hedges came to spend a month with us, and I found out that he'd read a book that I had also read by Glenn Simmons and Laura Ogden. And in the end of the book, there were specifications on how to build your own Everglades skiff, which he decided to do. He's an avid angler, loves everything about the ocean and fish, and if you're lucky, you actually have been to some of his installations where you can taste the food. He's an exceptional chef, and a lot of times his installations do have to do with food, where you can eat the product. So Jason was kind enough to take me out on that skiff. Right off of the main highway, we were able to drop the skiff in probably 4 to 6 inches of water and glide through this area looking for signs of wildlife. As most of you know, the weather has been very challenging the last few months. October was his month that he was down. It rained almost the whole time. And essentially, Jason did his best to explore the park under those conditions. Jason's an environmentalist. One of the things that he, I believe, is pursuing in his following artworks is trying to explore what's going on with our seagrass beds. You know, we're having a big seagrass die-off in Florida Bay, as you can see from that slide on the left. The front is the bow of his skiff. And on the right, you see him looking at a great lawn that's in front of the Visitors Center down at Flamingo. On February 28th, if you'd like to mark your calendars, Jason Hedges is going to work on an installation there. We invite you all down to see the installation, talk with the artist, and also with the artist in residence in February, which is T. Wheeler Castillo. Will you stand, Tom? Are you here? There you are in the back. Tom is here with Emily Milgram. They're going to be working on an installation called Transducing the Imperceptible Wetlands, a sound installation, hopefully at the Flamingo Amphitheater, so that should be an amazing day. Video artists Valerie and Daniel LeBlanc have a video called Flow, Big Waters. And that's what you were actually watching when you came into the auditorium. It's a 22-minute production that we showed at UM in a show called Anthropocene in March. It's an amazing work focused on the passage of man in our river of grass and examines ideas of swamps as metaphors for decay and ruin, as well as transformative agents of physical and spiritual states. I do want to note for the record, on my second slide this evening, a video started to play by Reed Van Brunschot. We're going to show you that whole video at the end of the presentation, okay? So many of you are probably wondering how we can share the work of writers. I'm going to give you a couple of ideas of that tonight. With O Miami, we were able to produce these, I think, 40-odd banners, poetry banners, and hang them all over parks. Shark Valley, right, Pedro? They were in Shark Valley. They were down in Everglades South, and they also hung in the city of Homestead. So this is a pretty neat way to get the poems and special words of our writers shared with the public in general. This is a still from a video by Anna Mendez. I believe Anna is donating this to the park. I think, Tommy, is that right? By the way, Tommy Kotz-Freeman, this phenomenal woman in the back with the wonderful red glasses, is a curator on our board. And let me tell you, we couldn't do much without her. She is just a powerhouse when it comes to helping us decide on the images that the artists are donating. Thank you, Tommy. So Rebecca Reeve photographed several pieces. She's one of the artists who did score highly and will have a billboard next year. Her concept were to portray these images as portals from the domestic to the wilderness. And this ritual seemed by extension to be confirmation of the deeply moving experience that one feels within the natural environment. This is Frankie Cruise. Frankie was with us in May. He's a very progressive Miami artist. Are you here tonight, Frankie? I got a message on my cell phone. I don't think he made it. We're thrilled to announce that Frankie's installation work also scored very highly. So you'll be looking for this image during Art Basel next year, Above Your Freeways. Emerging from a Swamp by Donna Levy. Donna is really very, very talented. She's an Israeli artist living in Brooklyn and has this billboard. It's really a wrap entitled Emerging from the Swamp at 2900 Northeast 1st Avenue, which is the building just west of the Rubel Collection, and it's on the west wall. We are thrilled to have Donna's work with us tonight. She's donnalevy.net, I believe, if you want to see some of her videos. They're quite amazing. So at this point, I would like to introduce to you Pedro Ramos. He was appointed in January, heads the nation's third largest park as it continues to wage a decades-long struggle to restore the flow of fresh water. Although restoration will be a priority for Pedro, he also hopes to do more to connect people with the actual place. Pedro recently said, "Art and America's national parks have a long, rich history. The AIRIE Wild Billboard campaign reminds all of us of that history and inspires our community to develop a personal connection with their Everglades, America's wildest and most special place." Please welcome the Superintendent of the National Park, Pedro Ramos. If you wish to stand, you can, or you can sit, it's up to you.
I'll stand up
Okay,
here.
wonderful.
Thank you, Deborah. Good evening, everybody. How are we doing? I tell you, I feel a lot more at home in the swamp. But if I had to leave the swamp and come to the city, to a place, there's no better place than this. Thank you to the PAM Museum for allowing us to be here today. I'm thrilled to be here with you all, and out of the gate, the first thing that I must do is congratulate Deborah Mitchell, the board, BJ, and the rest of the board members, and also the artists that are here that have been part of this amazing program over the course of the past several years. Who would have thought that we would be here, that we would have this much success? Although it's no surprise, because there was a lot of passion and there was a lot of commitment from the beginning into this project. And I do want to recognize Alan Scott from my team, Everglades National Park. Please stand up, Alan, and be recognized. He has been a champion.
And in addition to that, if there's anyone who knows more about AIRIE, it's Alan Scott. He was with this organization or this entity since it was created in 2001. We would be nothing in Everglades or in Miami without Alan Scott. So thank you very much.
We thank Alan Scott for a lot of things, and as a superintendent, I would be toast without Alan Scott. And we do have the deputy superintendent here also, Justin Unger. Stand up, be recognized real quick. Justin is still in his honeymoon. He got married 2 months ago to the beautiful bride next to him, Carissa. It's a family thing in the National Park Service, as you can tell, and with AIRIE, our partners and our friends. And what about the wild billboards? What an amazing project. I cannot think of a wilder way to connect people that would probably not connect with their national parks otherwise than with those billboards. And I'm very, very grateful for that. So Deborah asked me I said, Deborah, what do you want me to talk about? And she said, well, tell us a little bit about you and what's important to you in this role. And so I'll tell you that as the new superintendent, I came into the post back in January of Everglades National Park. It has been an amazing ride for me over the past 12 months. So many memorable moments that I will never forget. We had the President of the United States spend Earth Day here with us in South Florida and in Everglades National Park, highlighting the importance of this national treasure that we have right here in our backyard. And that gave us a lot of horsepower to get done what we've got to do down here. Just a couple of weeks ago, I went to Cuba to sign the first memorandum of understanding that in decades with that government on marine protection areas so that we can exchange information and collaborate, because these waters that we are stewards of down here in Florida Bay, Biscayne, Dry Tortugas, and otherwise, they don't see any boundaries. They're connected. And we have a responsibility to speak with our neighbors if we, in fact, want to be good stewards of these places that we're responsible for. And just this morning, I spoke at a naturalization ceremony where 150 new Americans raised their right hand with the backdrop of the Everglades and became U.S. citizens. And one of the things that I told them was just look around and think about where you're at as you receive this gift today of 408 national parks that now belong to you. So my first year, yes, it has been an amazing year. But Everglades has not been the place where I have been for the last 15 years here in South Florida, and I have met some of you throughout the course of the last 15 years. I spent 4 years at Big Cypress National Preserve, where I tell people I fell in love with the Everglades. What an amazing place. It is home to Houston and the Miccosukee people and also the Seminole people. And it is so many things to so many other people. It's a place that has its challenges, but not like the challenges that we face at Everglades National Park. Coming into Everglades National Park opened my eyes to some challenges that we will be facing, frankly, for many, many, many decades if we really want to do the right thing by this place. And water, which has been mentioned a couple times, and Houston, I love how you included it in your invocation. Thank you. Water is one of the main issues that we deal with in that place. The place was altered, and we will never get it back to what it used to be. But we have a responsibility as Americans to do what we can to get it right. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but because our livelihood down here in Florida depends on it. I don't know if you know, but 1 out of every 4 Floridians drinks water from the Everglades. Not South Floridians, Floridians. And these parks bring in about $250 million into the economy every year of South Florida. But the water is not the only problem that we have staring at us right in the face. We've got some big, big problems that we have to tackle. The problem of sea level rise is one that concerns me. I spent the day with my team in a science symposium on Monday, and one of the presentations had us all underwater in 100 years. It makes you think. It makes you think. We cannot ignore this sort of thing. We have to act. We have to do something about it. And when it comes to Everglades National Park, what we are doing is making that place as resilient as we can possibly make it so that it can withstand and adapt and transition into whatever it will transition eventually, because Mother Nature will do what Mother Nature will do. Exotics. We have a huge problem with exotics. People ask me, what keeps you up at night, Pedro? Those critters do. I wake up in the middle of the night. Is there anything in bed with me that can bite me? I joke about it to make it light, but it is a huge, it's a tall order for us to, at the same time as we restore the water for $20 billion, that we make sure that we don't restore it for a whole bunch of weeds that don't belong here to begin with, and animals that are eating the native animals and taking over the environment. That would be a shame. So some pretty significant problems. But I will venture to tell you that the one that worries me the most, perhaps besides the ocean taking over the whole park, which worries me a lot, is the issue of relevance. The issue of relevance. I told these 150 new citizens this morning, which, by the way, I'm going to be with another 150 tomorrow morning. What an amazing experience. What I told them was that they were getting the gift of 408 national parks that tell the story of who we are as a nation, what we are made out of as a people in this country. And we had a responsibility to enjoy them, but also to protect them in whichever way and role we chose to play. But people can't do that unless they have a connection with these places. We have 408 very special places. They each tell a very important part of our story as a country, whether natural or historic in terms of the nature of the site itself. They all do tell an important part of our story. But not everybody knows what they are. We have disconnected from the American people. It's not the kind of relationship that we used to have years ago. And that's in part because we've had a rapid change in demographics in our country, and shame on us for not having kept up with that responsibility to remain relevant to all the people, not just some people, because these places belong to who? To not just some people, to all of us. And that keeps me up at night. So after I check the bed for a snake, a python, I think of how are we going to bring more people into the tent? That's the sweet spot for me. And I'm saying all of this because I want to make the point that in part we have not succeeded throughout the country at making a connection with the communities around us as national parks because we haven't been open-minded, we haven't been creative, we haven't been innovative, we haven't been flexible, we haven't been willing to talk to people in the language that they need to be spoken to. We're all different. And all of that to make the point that I am immensely grateful, BJ, the chair, and the board, and Deborah, and all of the artists that have gone by and through the program for the work that you're doing, because you are helping us directly with this thing that keeps me up at night, by helping us connect with people that otherwise perhaps would not be able to have a relationship with these places in the way that I think we all as a nation need to have if we want to protect and maintain our cultural and natural heritage for years to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Pedro. That was wonderful. I would now like to introduce Florida native Eric Draper, a native. They're hard to find. Eric Draper, he is a career conservationist and is recognized as a leading advocate for Everglades restoration, water resource protection, and land conservation. Draper heads the state's most influential conservation group, the Audubon Society, which owns ecotourism destination Corkscrew Sanctuary, as well as other conservation lands and science and nature centers. Science staff and volunteers conduct extensive field research on water and wildlife, funded through contributions and grants to its state programs, and they have more than 30,000 members. Previously, Eric was the National Audubon Senior Vice President for Policy, Staff Director for the Florida House of Representatives Majority Office, and led the TNC's Florida Government Relations Program. Please welcome Eric Draper.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Thank you. And what a cruel thing to make me follow Pedro in speaking. I should have been his warm-up act instead. There's no way I can match his passion when I'm going to try and give it a shot. And Deborah, thank you. And congratulations for your I mean, this crowd tonight, the excitement around what you're doing with artists and residents at the Everglades is just really, really exciting. I also just want to say that I am so thrilled to actually be sitting in the same room with Bill Maxwell. I'm going to cut my comment short just so I can make sure that I hear more of what you have to say. I followed you for years in the paper, and you're a great spokesman for the values of our state of Florida. I don't want to let a moment go by without acknowledging just someone else in the two people in the audience here. My board chairman, Steve Lynch, is sitting up there. Steve, if you would just raise your hand. He is why we're able to raise enough money to do the good work that we do. Thank you very much, Steve. And we have Celeste De Palma. Celeste, if you would just wave. And Celeste is part of that diverse, growing environmental movement. She has a copy of our State of the Everglades report, which anyone can take home with you tonight, and that will tell you more about some of the good things that are going on, including, I just want to take a moment to commend you, Pedro, on the new general management plan that you put into place, which we worked with you on, and that's going to make sure that a lot more of the Everglades is a wilderness for a long time. So thank you very much for that. Now, I'm going to move into a couple of reflective comments. And Houston, I really appreciated your beautiful presentation. And you used the words heart and minds. And I'm going to see if I can connect that, because that's exactly what I want to talk about. I'm a public policy advocate, and you probably listened to my little resume. There was like all about going to Tallahassee and Washington and getting the money to restore the Everglades and getting the authorization in Congress and getting the authorization in the legislature. And Pedro, of course, I ran into you in Tallahassee last week when you were up there talking to those very cynical legislators about what we're trying to do down here. And thank you for putting yourself through that. That's pretty much my daily life. But I know this thing, which is that we don't move people through our heads and through their heads and through what we say about their heads. We move them through their hearts. And that's why I was so excited to be invited to come and talk here today, because I thought, oh, art, that's how we get to people's hearts, right? That's how we move them, we inspire them. So here's a little story. Audubon, right? That's the national conservation movement, but it is named after one individual who really changed the way that we think about nature. Changed the way that we think about nature, singularly changed the way that people actually looked at art and wildlife on a canvas and on his engravings. And wildlife art was never the same after Audubon. He changed the way that we saw things. And I've got this great story I love to say, because, he came to Florida. And Florida at that time, during Audubon's time, was truly a wilderness. I mean, it was not an easy place to get to at all. You actually had to travel, and we saw a picture of a skiff there. You had to travel in small sailboats just to get around. Well, Audubon he desperately had heard of course, had never seen except in skins, brown pelican, and he really wanted to paint the brown pelican. So he came to Florida to find brown pelicans. And he searched, and he was down in the Florida Keys, and he had heard that there was a sandbar where there was a group of brown pelicans resting. And he found them. And this is what he wrote back in a letter to his wife that night. He sat down and wrote this letter. He said that when the boat rounded the island and he saw the group of pelicans there, he said that his heart soared with uncontrollable delight. Isn't that amazing? Who knew that Audubon, such a great painter, was also such a great poet? And ever since I heard that, I said, that is the Audubon cause. We don't just need to convince people that it's the right thing to do, that the loss of 90% of the wading birds in the Everglades is unacceptable, that we need to get phosphorus reduced to 10 parts per billion. We have to find a way to speak to their hearts. And Pedro, I think that if, in fact, we want to create that big tent, we have to create a big tent for passion, for hearts. I want each and every one of you, when you leave here tonight, to imagine yourselves out in nature, whether it's the Everglades or some other park, out in that place, standing there with your toes gripping the sand or your feet covered with mud and the wind blowing through your hair. And even if you feel the mosquitoes and the heat of the sun, I want your heart to soar with uncontrollable delight, because that passion is the only thing that really has ever driven conservation, successful conservation, and it's the only thing actually that is going to continue to drive conservation. And why do we need that? You saw the picture of the man with the skiff, and I forgot your name already, I'm sorry, but I really enjoyed seeing the images there. And you had your pole in the water, and you were pulling up dead and dying seagrass. And right now, in the park, in Florida Bay, as a result of water management, human-made activities, we've lost, and excuse me for using a statistic, 5,000 acres of seagrass. Maybe 10% of the seagrass in Florida Bay, which is no doubt, if experience is any reality, is going to rot and create an algae bloom, and we'll see more destruction in the bay. Well, you know, we can fix that. We can fix that. We've already demonstrated that. Next month, we'll have a groundbreaking at Everglades National Park for the C-111 canal for the second phase. Already the first phase is working. We have demonstrated if we just change the way that we manage our water in South Florida, we can fix the Everglades, we can fix Florida Bay, we can bring back the ecological conditions that tell us it works. And what is the measure? We know what the measure is. Birds are the measure and treasure of the Everglades, which is why my heart soars when I go out into Florida Bay and I see brown pelicans coming back, and I see osprey coming back, and I see roseate spoonbills flying toward their nest. And I go over the western Everglades and see wood storks, and I go up in the northern part of the Everglades system and I see the largest concentration of bald eagles anywhere east of the Mississippi River, right here in Florida. And I go to Lake Okeechobee, which is the critical nesting area for the Everglades snellkite. Yes, we have a bird named after the Everglades snellkite, which is highly evolved just to live off one snell, and when those snells are there, the birds are successful. Yes, birds are the measure and they are the treasure of the Everglades, because when we see birds in their natural habitat, we are enriched. It's like somebody deposited treasure in our hearts, and that gets us excited. So I'm going to challenge all of you great artists in the room. I know that we're full of art lovers and artists, and to help us move those hearts, help us to put that uncontrollable delight into people's hearts so that we can move more minds and more political will in the direction to make sure that Pedro has the resources he needs to do his job, to control those species, and to get the plants and the animals back the way they are. And so the Everglades, once again, are somewhat similar to the way that John Audubon found them when he took his boat down to the Florida Keys 150 years ago. Thank you very much.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much. I am beyond thrilled to say a couple of words about Susan before she comes to the microphone and shows you some of the images of her work. The concept of using stunning artwork blazed across the existing billboards was brought to life by Susan's work called Flight, a series of birds that she worked on when she was photographing things in the Everglades a couple of years ago. She's a visual artist who lives and works in Brooklyn and has been exhibiting her work in the US and in Europe since 1985, has taught at NYU. Her work has focused on landscape and memory for several decades now. During the summer of 2013, Susan requested special permits from Florida Fish and Wildlife to photograph birds in the park. Dead birds, I believe. Yes, yes. I was just getting involved with AIRIE at the time, and I vaguely remember some of the details. It was difficult. The permit was denied. We were very disappointed because that was a large part of her project, and she considered canceling her trip, but thankfully decided to come to Florida anyway during the challenging month of August. So she deserves a round of applause just for that. She photographed bird specimens archived in the South Florida Collections Management Center within the park, and also decided to photograph some living birds, as you will see shortly. In early 2014, I contacted several artists about an exhibition that I was putting together called Flight, which locally was at the Art Center South Florida. I know Susan Caraballo's in the audience. Susan, you around? She's wonderful. She does a great job curating over there. Susan sent me the images, some of which you'll see this evening, and the series called Flight just blew me away. I thought when I saw those images, if we could bring real billboards to South Florida like that, it would be perfect and offer the opportunity to many of our artists. These powerful images inspired us to apply to the Knight's Art Challenge, which we were awarded 1 year ago to help make, and I quote, art general all over South Florida. The Knight Foundation believes that democracy thrives when people and communities are informed and engaged. It's a priority of the Knight Foundation to deepen our feeling of community and also nurture cultural leaders, which is one of the reasons why AIRIE is now considered one of the leading residencies in South Florida. So with that, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Susan. Please give her a warm welcome.
Well, this is my little,
And this is the only time you use that.
right?
Yes.
And then, okay.
And that's the only time you use that for the video.
I guess that's me up there, photographed by Deborah out in Everglades National Park. I wanted to begin by saying a few thank yous. I was here in Miami 2 years ago just by chance for the opening of this museum. And I'm very happy to be here again, and I want to thank the Perez Museum for hosting us today. I'd like to thank especially AIRIE, its director and board, for an extraordinary month in residence in Everglades National Park, and for taking the initiative to apply for funding for my billboard project, and for expanding this to include many other AIRIE artists. I'd like to thank Everglades National Park for making a special place for AIRIE, and I feel honored to be on a panel with Everglades National Park Superintendent Pedro Ramos. Over the years, my images and portfolios of dead and decaying birds have often been compared by people to the works of John James Audubon, which is a very special compliment, and I'm very pleased also to be in the company of Eric Draper. And I would especially like to thank the Knight Foundation for funding this project and for all of the other great work they do supporting the arts in South Florida. My work over the past 2 decades could be likened to 3 tributaries that all run toward the same body of water. All 3 streams are deeply important to me, and while they appear to be distinct bodies of work, they're all connected not merely by authorship, in other words, by having been created by me, but by my exploration of the fragility of sentient being in all 3 bodies of work, in individual cases and in the face of the unforgiving forces of history. My work on the Holocaust germinates from the memory of the images of all those bodies, stacked like cordwood that appeared in newsreels and in photographs when the concentration camps were liberated in 1945. I have no idea when those images became part of my consciousness because I don't remember a time when I didn't know about them. The images I've taken of myself over the past 15 years are connected to this work obliquely as they consider a range of ideas, starting with our notions of privacy and self-intimacy, control over our images, and the slow ruin of the analog body with aging. And most directly with respect to the Billboard project, the photographs, portfolios, and videos of dead and decaying birds, there we go, that I've taken for the past 15 years look to rehabilitate the singularity of sentient being. It is in this sense that my images of dead birds are related to those images of desiccated bodies lying in piles in concentration camps that entered my consciousness as a child, because those bodies were denied singularity and were, by the time they were documented, essentially heaps of garbage to be disposed of, when in fact, each one represented a lived life, not to mention murder. Because the work photographing birds began as a serendipitous encounter with a just dead sparrow on the sidewalk in Brooklyn in 2000, something I could just as easily have walked by without taking any notice, the connection between this work and my work on the Holocaust was not immediately evident to me. It became clear to me as I became more engaged with the work. One could say that I began to understand my own work by watching what I was doing. When I began to photograph birds of different species together, as you see here, it was a more self-conscious effort, thinking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and other intractable problems in the world, and choosing to show a reconciliation in death that defied the nature of these creatures in life. A bird of prey, for example, embracing a dove. I saw them as a symbolic form of hope in a situation increasingly hopeless to resolve. When I applied to the residency in Everglades National Park, my plan was to find a dead pelican or vulture to shoot over the course of the month. It turned out that in order to collect, in other words, move to a studio setting, a dead bird inside the park, I needed a collection permit from the Fish and Wildlife Commission. After 8 months of back and forth, they decided in their infinite wisdom that an artist was not really worthy of such a permit. Such permits were meant solely for scientists. To defy them could be a felony. So the question at the very last moment was, what am I going to do with myself for a month? The South Florida Collections Management Center, located inside the park, took pity on me. They allowed me 2 days of incredible access. The series of photographs that resulted, titled The Specimen Drawer, which our moderator, Deborah Mitchell, curated into 2. I also encountered a dead bird on the side of the road inside the park and created this video titled Fly Like the Wind. This is just a short excerpt. I was able to accomplish this without moving or touching the bird, thus within the strict parameters set for me by the Wildlife Commission. But I was there for a month, so what to do, I had no idea. After hanging out in the park, I began to follow the vultures and sometimes the crows around the park. I got to know where they would hang out in the morning, where to find them later in the day, and where they would congregate in large numbers. I photographed them every day. When I went home, I wasn't sure what to do with the images. I usually shoot dead, not live birds, and the work didn't really fit into my ongoing body of work. It felt anomalous. But I also missed these fantastic large birds. In the park, at some of the parking lots, you can borrow a tarp to put over your windshield because playful, bored adolescent vultures will pick the rubber that surrounds the windshield off your car and watch as your windshield caves in. Vultures are profoundly elegant in the air, both flying and soaring, and I concentrated my efforts on catching them in flight or alighting on branches. On the ground, they're more awkward than a chicken, waddling and clumsy. They seem to be fairly social, spending much of their day in small groups. They will also stand with their wings open, perhaps just the males, displaying themselves to one another. The crows can be found in small groups, but they travel in pairs as couples that mate for life, and they mourn their dead. What if I could see them in the middle of New York City? Imagine. And that is when I hit upon the idea of photoshopping them into billboards to see what it would be like to have them in my urban environment. I photographed billboards in New York, then later on Sunset Strip in Los Angeles and in Miami. And I replaced the advertisements with my birds. I thought of all of these composite photographs as a proposal for a billboard. So I titled them all Flight, proposal for a billboard, and specified the city where they were located. This was actually the first one. The fact is that we as a species do need to think more carefully about our interdependence with other creatures on the planet, even the ones invisible to us at any given moment. As soon as I created the first image, the one you see here of a large crow in flight in Soho, I could see that the billboard conveyed this message in a straightforward way without being didactic. And so I had not only brought the Everglades home with me to New York, but I had created a device that encapsulated a vivid and important idea, something that was both an artwork and an appeal. I had two ideas for the billboard in Miami. One, somehow quiet and minimal, this one. And the other, the disdainful vulture perched on a long branch, glancing over his shoulder, and that's the one we settled on. Now Flight, proposal for a billboard, is a reality here in Miami. You can see it from Northwest 38th Street and Northwest 2nd Avenue near the Design Center, and along the highway on I-195 in Wynwood. It's facing east. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for coming down. Susan's been here for 10 days, watching a little bit of Art Basel, waiting for this evening. We're just thrilled to welcome her tonight. I just have a couple more images for you. We're almost done with our program. This is an amazing still from Christina Peterson's video. Christina is our artist in residence right now in the park. She also has had a lot of rain to deal with, is shooting film and video and sketching and drawing. She will be doing a performance piece down there on January 31st in conjunction with Jose Elias, who will be our January fellow. Jose, are you here? Want to stand up? I saw you earlier. There you are. He's a musician. He was with Spam and the All-Stars. So we look forward to that program. And again, we thank Christina for working so hard this month. We're all big fans of hers. The big reveal, our 2016 artists are Jose Elias, here this evening, T. Wheeler Castillo, Elizabeth Condon, Dana Wildsmith, Valerie George, Hannah Starr Rogers, Ann Stanford, Brooke Hart Jonkiel, Julia Roldham, and Joyanne Biddle. Congratulations. Now I'd like to introduce an AIRIE Fellow from 2013 or 12, and a volunteer writer for the National Park Service, currently living in the Everglades National Park. His opinions can be read everywhere about politics, education, race, Medicaid, Israel, Cuba, Fort Jefferson, and yes, the environment. He is on a literary crusade to save and protect our glades and waters. And Bill, come on up. I'm going to let you all know my favorite quote from Bill is about the Everglades, and he says, "We come here to see the wild things." Please welcome Bill Maxwell.
Well, as you said, I'm actually living a dream. I live in the Everglades for at least 3 to 4 months. This is my third time living there, so I think that some of you all would probably want to do that. So I'm doing it, and I'm very lucky to do that. Well, you know, I'm going to talk tonight for a few minutes, and it may be a false note, I hope not, after following all of these people in Houston. Mine is rather political. Well, I'm a columnist. I write for a newspaper, so that's what I do. Now, some of you all have heard a version of this already. Skip, Justin, Jason, you all can leave, okay? So I want you to listen tonight, because I want this to be more than just words. I want it to mean something, because I think that when I get invited to do things, I always ask, is this going to be an event, or will it turn into something? I don't like to do events. And so what I'm going to say tonight, I hope it means something to you. And if it does, then you will do something. And that's the whole point of this. If we do not radically change our environmental practices, the already bad conditions in the Everglades will worsen. And you do not need to be a scientist to know this. No, we're not going to kill the Everglades, but we will turn it into a landscape we do not recognize if we continue on the current path. A few years ago, I read a book, The World Without Us, by Alan Weisman. He describes how just a few days after humans disappear, the earth will begin to heal. Waters will flow when they should, where they should, and at the rate that they should. Fires will burn when and where they should. The rejuvenation of Earth will begin. Here in Florida, Lake Okeechobee will return to being a lake instead of a holding tank for big sugar, real estate, and other businesses. Because we humans will not be around to operate the pumps, dig more canals, and build more locks and dams, Lake Okeechobee's waters will flow naturally in all directions. The Hoover Dike will be breached, and the Everglades will thrive again. I have only recently come to appreciate the concept of the Dark Mountain Project. That concept goes like this, and I quote, "We are not going to save the planet. The planet is not ours to save. The planet is not dying, but our civilization might be." I'm not talking about giving up on the environment. Absolutely not. I'm talking about coming to our senses before it's too late. We must reconsider, and this is why I'm here tonight, to just say this. We must reconsider who we put in office to make policy. How can we continue to elect those who do not believe or do not care that human activity affects the climate and thus everything else? How do we continue to elect those kind of people? The time has come to stand up with outrage and action to so-called leaders who wantonly destroy our natural world. Each year, we bring about the extinction of a species. What makes us think that we are not on the road to human extinction as a result of our excess, our arrogance, and our sense of dominion? The Everglades is trying to tell us something. In part, it is saying this: stop sending bad people to Tallahassee who appoint their cronies to environmental agencies and committees. In Florida, science is under siege. Those in power proudly boast that they are not scientists, which means that they can rationalize dumping sound evidence, logic, and common sense. We need to find a way to buy big sugar land as soon as possible. Our elected officials and appointed officials do not have the courage to do it. Why do we continue to elect such people? We must stop it. Finally, we need to get our kids involved. We need to get them involved from birth. They need to be active stewards of our natural world. They are our only hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. I really appreciate that. I think that's the bottom line, everybody. If we care about the Everglades, we need to make a difference. It's wonderful to get out and enjoy it. I want you to hike and kayak and enjoy it. But you need to take all the things you've heard here tonight to the polls when you vote. Read the op-ed columns. Talk to your superintendents and your executive directors of influential organizations. Look at billboards with brilliant ideas from wonderful artists. That's what I really want you to think about. In closing, we have a couple of sponsors up there that we thank so much for the opportunity to be here tonight. Reed Van Brunschot, can you stand up there, please? Say hello, Reed. She's in the back. Wonderful artist from last year. Reed selected the Hole in the Donut region, near the Nike missile site for push and pull. You can see a sense of control and powerlessness, and the creature struggles to survive. The area that we're talking about has a history of contested landscape where pioneers battled nature to plant controlled crops, endured the hardships of living and working there, and then tried to repair the damage by an intensive and seemingly successful restoration. Let's get that for Reed. There it is. So as I mentioned, this plays on for a few minutes. You're welcome to sit and enjoy it or slowly make your way out. We would like to thank you so much for coming out and spending the evening with us. It means so much to us. Visit our website. We have our events for January and February coming, as I mentioned, in the park. We're very excited to celebrate the park centennial with you in the Everglades, not just in these lovely, beautiful halls of Pam. I showed this video this week to the Funding Arts Network as well. There were about 300 people in the room, and everybody was just giggling, which was, I thought, wonderful. Reed does a lot of different work. Some of it has to do with inflatables. Last week during Art Basel, she had an amazing room, chairs, a table, a birthday cake, all inflated in white plastic for a celebration for the Spinello Gallery, correct? It was gorgeous, gorgeous. We just lost her to LA, though. One thing I didn't mention is when the artists come to do their residency, a required event is an outreach event and also to donate a piece of work to the park. And the work actually belongs to the park, therefore you, the people. This was donated by Reed to us just last month. We're just thrilled with it. So if you recall in my introduction, this is an area called Hole in the Donut, which was literally scraped back to the ground by machines to the limestone to make sure all of the invasives were killed. And it seems to be very successful. I was out just a couple of weeks ago, and everything is blooming beautifully. So with this, I thank you all for coming. Thank you. Thank you so much to Mari and Pam and all of the staff here, Eric and Susan, Pedro. Drive safely and happy holidays, everyone.